Caution: the following story contains disturbing content and is not suitable for children. The Silent Watcher. In the seemingly perfect suburban neighborhood of Maplewood, darkness lurked in the shadows. This is the chilling tale of a silent watcher who turned one woman's life into a living nightmare. Welcome to The Silent Watcher. Maplewood was a picturesque suburb where families felt safe and neighbors knew each other by name. It was the kind of place where doors were often left unlocked and children played outside until dusk. Among its residents was Anna Mitchell, a young woman who had recently moved into the neighborhood after a messy breakup. She hoped for a fresh start and a chance to rebuild her life. Anna's new home was a charming two-story house on a quiet street. She loved the sense of community and the friendly faces that greeted her every morning. But as the weeks passed, Anna began to notice something unsettling. She felt as though she was being watched. It started with a prickling sensation on the back of her neck whenever she was outside. She brushed it off as paranoia, a leftover feeling from her tumultuous past. One evening, as Anna was settling into bed, she heard a faint tapping noise coming from her bedroom window. She froze, heart pounding, and listened intently. The tapping continued, slow and rhythmic. Summoning her courage, she approached the window and peeked through the curtains. There was nothing there but the darkness of her backyard. She closed the curtains tightly, convincing herself it was just a branch hitting the window. Days turned into weeks, and the feeling of being watched grew stronger. Anna began to notice small signs that something was amiss. Objects in her house seemed to move on their own. She would leave her keys on the kitchen counter and find them on the living room table. Her mail would be scattered across the floor, even though she was sure she had left it neatly stacked. The sense of unease became a constant presence in her life. One night, Anna decided to stay up late, hoping to catch a glimpse of whatever or whoever was causing her distress. She turned off all the lights and sat quietly in her living room, her eyes fixed on the window. Hours passed, and just as she was about to give up, she saw it. A shadowy figure standing at the edge of her yard. The figure was tall and motionless, its face obscured by the darkness. Anna's breath caught in her throat. She grabbed her phone and dialed 911, her hands shaking. The figure remained still, as if watching her every move. The police arrived within minutes, but by then the figure had vanished. They searched the yard and the surrounding area, but found no sign of an intruder. The officers assured Anna that they would keep an eye on the neighborhood and advised her to stay vigilant. The incident left Anna rattled. She installed new locks on her doors and windows and bought a security system. Despite these precautions, the feeling of being watched persisted. She confided in her neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, an elderly woman who had lived in Maplewood for decades. Mrs. Thompson listened sympathetically and offered to keep an eye out for anything unusual. One evening, Mrs. Thompson came over with a plate of cookies and a piece of news. "I saw someone lingering near your house last night," she said, her voice low. "It was a man, tall and wearing a dark coat. He was standing by your back fence, just watching your house." Anna's heart sank. The silent watcher was real. She thanked Mrs. Thompson and decided to take more drastic measures. She set up motion-activated cameras around her property, hoping to catch the stalker in the act. Every night she checked the footage, but the cameras captured nothing unusual. The figure seemed to know how to avoid detection. Weeks went by, and Anna tried to go about her life as normally as possible. She went to work, spent time with friends, and tried to push the fear to the back of her mind. But the silent watcher was always there, lurking in the shadows of her thoughts. She began to doubt her own sanity, wondering if the stress of her past was causing her to imagine things. Then, one night, everything changed. Anna was lying in bed, half asleep, when she heard the faint sound of footsteps inside her house. Her eyes flew open, and she listened, her heart pounding. The footsteps were slow and deliberate, moving through the hallway toward her bedroom. She reached for her phone, but it wasn't on her nightstand where she had left it. Panic surged through her as she realized she was alone and defenseless. The footsteps stopped just outside her bedroom door. Anna's mind raced. She needed to find a way to protect herself. She glanced around the room, her eyes landing on a heavy lamp on her dresser. She quietly slipped out of bed and grabbed the lamp, holding it tightly. The door creaked open, and a dark figure stepped into the room. Anna didn't wait. She swung the lamp with all her might, hitting the intruder on the side of the head. The figure stumbled and fell to the floor with a thud. Anna's hands were trembling, and she struggled to catch her breath. She turned on the light and finally saw the face of her stalker. It was a man, his face twisted in pain and anger. He wore a mask that had slipped off during the struggle, revealing cold, empty eyes. Anna didn't recognize him, but the sight of his face sent a chill down her spine. She quickly called the police, keeping the lamp raised in case he tried to move. The officers arrived within minutes and apprehended the man. They searched him and found a knife in his pocket, confirming Anna's worst fears. He had intended to harm her. The police identified the stalker as Mark Reynolds, a drifter with a history of violence and mental illness. He had been living in the abandoned house down the street, watching Anna and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The officers praised Anna for her bravery and assured her that Reynolds would be locked away for a long time. Despite the relief of knowing her stalker was caught, Anna couldn't shake the trauma of the experience. She struggled with nightmares and anxiety, constantly checking her surroundings and double-locking her doors. Mrs. Thompson and other neighbors offered their support, but Anna felt a lingering sense of vulnerability. Anna decided to move out of Maplewood, hoping to leave the memories of the silent watcher behind. She found a new home in a different town, a place where she could start fresh. But the scars of her ordeal remained, a constant reminder of the danger that had once lurked in the shadows. Years passed, and Anna built a new life for herself. She made new friends, found a job she loved, and slowly began to heal. But every so often she would catch herself looking over her shoulder, the fear of the silent watcher never completely fading. She knew that while she had escaped the nightmare, the memory of it would stay with her forever. Margaret Simmons, the elderly neighbor who had helped Anna, remained a vigilant observer of the neighborhood even after Anna moved away. One night she noticed a flickering light in the window of the abandoned house where Mark Reynolds had been hiding. The house had been empty since his arrest, but now it seemed someone else had taken up residence. Margaret's curiosity got the better of her, and she decided to investigate. She grabbed a flashlight and walked cautiously towards the house. As she approached, she saw a shadow moving inside. Her heart pounded, but she was determined to find out who had moved in. She peered through a broken window and saw a man sitting at a table, surrounded by photographs. Margaret recognized the photos immediately. They were of Anna and other women from the neighborhood. The man was meticulously organizing them, his face hidden in the shadows. Margaret gasped, realizing that this man was another stalker, perhaps even more dangerous than Reynolds. She hurried back to her house and called the police, her hands trembling. The officers arrived quickly and stormed the abandoned house. They found the man still sitting at the table, his eyes wide with surprise. He was arrested without incident, and the police confiscated the photographs and other disturbing evidence. The new stalker, identified as Paul Turner, had been watching the neighborhood for months. He had been drawn to Anna, just like Reynolds, but had focused on other women as well. His obsession had driven him to move into the abandoned house, believing it would bring him closer to his targets. The news of Paul's arrest sent shockwaves through Maplewood. The residents were horrified to learn that another stalker had been living among them, undetected for so long. The police increased their patrols, and the neighborhood watch became more active, determined to prevent such a terrifying situation from happening again. Anna, now living in a different town, heard about Paul's arrest from Mrs. Thompson. The news brought back a flood of memories, but it also gave her a sense of closure. She realized that her instincts had been right all along, and that the danger she had felt was very real. Anna decided to use her experience to help others. She started a support group for victims of stalking and harassment, sharing her story and offering advice on how to stay safe. Her bravery and determination inspired many, and the group grew quickly. Through her work, Anna met other survivors who had experienced similar nightmares. They bonded over their shared trauma and found strength in each other's stories. Anna's support group became a beacon of hope for those who had been living in fear, offering practical advice on personal safety and emotional support. One evening, after a particularly emotional meeting, Anna received a call from Mrs. Thompson. She answered, expecting to catch up on the latest neighborhood gossip. Instead, Mrs. Thompson's voice was filled with urgency. "Anna, I think you need to see this," she said. "I found something strange in my backyard. I think it might be connected to your stalker." Anna's heart raced as she listened. She drove back to Maplewood the next day, filled with both dread and determination. When she arrived, Mrs. Thompson led her to a spot near the back fence, where a small, weathered box was partially buried in the dirt. With shaking hands, Anna opened the box. Inside were more photographs, notes, and small trinkets that she recognized as her own. It was clear that Reynolds and Turner had both used Mrs. Thompson's backyard as a hiding place for their macabre collections. The discovery was a chilling reminder of how close the danger had always been. Anna felt a wave of nausea, but also a fierce determination to protect her community. She handed the evidence over to the police, who promised to reopen the investigation and ensure that any remaining threats were neutralized. Back in her new town, Anna's support group flourished. She collaborated with local law enforcement to provide workshops on personal safety and self-defense, empowering others to take control of their lives. Her efforts were recognized by community leaders, and she received numerous awards for her advocacy work. Years passed, and while the scars of her ordeal never fully faded, Anna found peace in knowing that she had turned her trauma into something positive. She had transformed from a victim into a survivor and a protector, helping countless others find the strength to stand up against the darkness. One night, as Anna was locking up after a support group meeting, she felt a familiar prickling sensation on the back of her neck. She turned slowly, her heart pounding, but saw nothing. The shadow seemed to move, but she reminded herself that she was no longer the scared woman who had once lived in constant fear. Anna took a deep breath, steeling herself against the remnants of her past. She knew that she had built a new life, one where she was in control. The silent watcher no longer held power over her. She was stronger now, and she was determined to keep moving forward. As she walked to her car, Anna glanced over her shoulder one last time, her eyes scanning the shadows. The world was filled with dangers, but she was no longer afraid. She had faced the darkness and come out the other side, ready to help others do the same. The story of the Silent Watcher serves as a chilling reminder that even in the safest places, darkness can lurk just beyond the light. Anna's bravery saved her life, but the scars of her ordeal remain. Always be vigilant and never let your guard down. Thank you for joining us for this spine-chilling tale. If you enjoyed The Silent Watcher, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories that will keep you up at night. Until next time, remember, sometimes the greatest threats are the ones we cannot see. Please, like and subscribe. Comment and share if you like this kind of horror story. Thank you, your Nightmare Stream.